What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 630 of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast, Hot Tags of the Week, the final one of the year, the final podcast that we're doing for this year before we switch over to the new year. So thank you for joining us for that. And, if you don't know who we are, you're brand new to this. I'm Tony Mango, joined by Robert E. Felice.
Hey.
And Callum Wiggins.
Guess we're not doing a post show for World's End then.
Oh, yeah, technically that would be. Yeah, I'm forgetting that's...
Tony's been trying to, rush the end of this year.
This year will never end. It will never end as long as we keep talking.
Well, the world is ending, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. World's End. It's all going to come crashing down. It's going to hurt inside. I keep forgetting that World's End's December 30th and not, January 3rd or something. That's, today doesn't feel like a Friday to me. I'll say that.
I'll say this. Legitimately, we might be in for one of the most packed weeks of all of wrestling, just in general.
You got World's End. We got all this New Year's knockout stuff we're going to be doing our predictions
Wrestle
for.
Kingdom,
Wrestle Kingdom, yeah.
Week.
Thursday.
Thursday.
That's such a stupid joke. I thought it would be funny. Anyway, as we go ahead and we tell you what we think about all these hot tags, obviously we want to know what you have to say too, so drop your thoughts in the comments section below. And while you're doing that, over there on YouTube, click on all the good buttons that you see on there. Click on the join button. That'll give you access to the same stuff as the Patreon. So if you want the dark cast for all the previous episodes, because you don't just get the most recent one, you get all of them when you do that. If you want to do the Pick a Poison tier, that's where you can do it. Just click on the little thanks button too if you want to toss a little spare change our way. Redbubble and TeePublic is where you can pick up some merchandise. It's completely free to make sure that you are subscribed to this channel and to hit that little like button on there too. And yes, we will be doing a post show for World's End, so double check that you have your email alerts set up too. And that way, when we go live, you'll get that little pop up, and that way you can join us and chat along with us as we run down the pay-per-view and all, which we will have to talk about some updates to the card, among many other things we have on the hot tags here. So, where do you guys want to start? Anywhere in particular? Got a lineup of a couple different things.
I mean, you're in
Or
control
score
of it,
in
so
7 years ago. What? Where are we starting?
You're saying that he's got the sheet in front of him. I know we talked about it before
technically,
the podcast started, but I can't remember what you said 5 minutes ago. So I'll let you be in control.
There you go. I'll copy and paste that in Skype so you guys can see it.
Well, because it was where we left off, let's start with the additions to the World's End card.
That sounds like a good idea. So we do know some changes for World's End that we hadn't talked about on the predictions because obviously they had not aired Dynamite yet, and some of the stuff was still up in the air, and they've sorted out the TBA people, and they've added some more matches to the card as we expected. So some of the differences that we have going on, the tag title match that had been previously scheduled, where it was Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega going up against Big Bill and Ricky Starks. Omega's out. We've known that he's going to be dealing with diverticulitis, so they needed to do something else. And we were talking about the idea that maybe it was going to be Kota Ibushi would come in, tag with Jericho or whatever. Instead, they have decided to make that an 8-man tag team match. And it's going to be Ricky Starks, Big Bill, Konosuke Takeshita, and Powerhouse Hobbs against Chris Jericho, Sting, Darby Allin. And what happened on the Dynamite episode, Don Callis' family had these paintings for everybody, and it led into, long story short, Sammy Guevara returning, being like, hey, screw you, pal, and reforming the Sex Gods with Chris Jericho. So the whole setup of Jericho being, a target for Sammy Guevara, we didn't end up really getting it. They just went back to the status quo. So Jericho and Sammy, Sting and Darby against Don Callis' family group, and Big Bill and Ricky Starks. It's a generic match instead of a tag title match, because you couldn't obviously do that. And yeah, it makes sense. You get a lot of people on the card and all. I thought originally that Kyle Fletcher was in this match. I thought I had him written down even. But according to Wikipedia, it's Takeshita and Hobbs.
They originally had him on the graphic saying it would be Carl Fletcher, but they seemingly switched it the next day to say it was Takeshita instead.
Which I am more down for Takeshita and Hobbs than Fletcher in there. I'm not as big of a fan of Fletcher compared to the other two, but this will be fun. A lot of good, talented people in there. Thumbs up.
Lots of fun here. I was hoping that the absence of Takeshita meant that he was going to win another match that was added to the card that we'll talk about shortly. But it seems that they want to go with Takeshita here. That's cool. I don't love that they were just like, fuck it. Let's go back to Sammy and Jericho as a team. But hindsight 2020, should have seen that coming. Yeah, I think this will be fun. And good for Sting to get on the Long Island show.
Yeah, the match itself will be fun. I'm kind of on the same wavelength as Rob is saying that the whole Sammy Guevara heel turn was just an unmitigated flop because, well, yeah, he turned heel. He was realistically only heel for a week and a half.
Yeah.
Turned on Jericho and then had one match with him and then got concussed and now is just back to being aligned with Jericho again. That's just a little bit disappointing, but hey ho, that's kind of just the way things go. There's just been a lot of injuries that have affected this and other matches on the card. So I guess they're trying to make the best of a bad situation.
The random Snow White that you'd popped up there. Hey ho, that's just the way the things go. That took me by surprise. Yeah, I mean, this is the type of thing that I don't look at this as negatively as some other things where, like, the Ring of Honor show, I was like, oh my god, nothing's planned in advance. They got to switch things up, and they ended up going with a lineup now that looks like it's a good replacement.
I dare say I pitched this a lot for Sting and Darby, but I would have made this a fatal 4-way tag and just put Sting and Darby over. I would have had them be champions even if it was for 3 days. I would have had them be champions.
Just put the belts on the line and have, instead of it being like the heels against the faces, it's like the 4 teams and
the 4 teams, and then Sting and Darby win, and it's cool because Sting has a championship for a couple days. Like, that's a fun moment, you know? Fun end of the year. Yay! Like, I think more people need that.
I wouldn't have been opposed to that. We do know now that the Continental Classic Tournament final is going to be Eddie Kingston versus Jon Moxley. We were basically assuming that was going to be the case. So, man, I don't think it really changed any of our opinions, right?
I'm sorry, but that whole show, I'm just like, come on, Switchblade. Come on, Dragon. Like, look, I like Eddie Kingston. I just don't think that he is what everyone else seems to think he is. I think Eddie Kingston's a great character for like the next couple years. But you've got this young stud in Jay White. You know, you've got this guy who can be on top for decades to come. I get that we're giving everybody their flowers. That seems to be the theme in AEW right now. But I really wanted Jay White to win this thing.
I mean, I was assuming that Swerve would be the guy that would be catapulted with this one, but they've gone in a different direction with him, which is totally fine. I think that this match is just going to be a lot of fun. It's 2 guys that know each other really well, and they're going to have an absolute war in the ring. So I think it's, that's like, as options go, I think it's a pretty solid one to round it off. It tells a good story, and yeah, the promo segment they cut after Kingston defeated Danielson is really, really helped sell this match, like as an intense brawl between 2 people that are very familiar with each other, and Moxley getting in the head of Kingston saying, like, well, you've never beaten me, you've pretty much already lost before you even started this match, and Kingston refuting that profusely is just like, yeah, this is going to work out. I think this is going to be a super fun match. I also really liked they did a Twitter video of Danielson following like one of his post-match thing, and him just bursting into tears about the loss, and just him talking about how desperate he is to win a championship in AEW, which he hasn't been able to do so far, and whether he has a right to still call himself the best in the world if he can't get over the line and win these big matches when they count. That could serve as an interesting catapult into what the remainder of his time in AEW looks like.
I am so down for more pro wrestlers to do that. I've talked about it on this podcast before. I love championship-centric pro wrestling and the idea that you should want to be champion. I think one of the biggest problems with Danielson is that we know too well that he doesn't give a shit about putting himself over anyone. So there's always like that, but Brian probably won't win because he doesn't need to, and it's like, yeah, I was all for him potentially holding the Ring of Honor title one more time, and they went in the direction they went. I fully see Eddie Kingston winning, but this was a really great promo.
Yeah, I'm even more so now thinking Kingston wins, but I guess we'll figure it out tomorrow. That Hook and Wheeler Yuta match was moved to the pre-show, but they also announced another pre-show match, a 20-man battle royal, the winner getting a TNT title match in the future. Nobody's been announced to it yet, so that's like, we're flying blind as far as, I think, this person will win necessarily. And we obviously don't even know who's going to be TNT champion, because it could be Edge, it could be Christian. Then anybody can win, because they've shown in the past that like anybody can win these battle royals and all. Whether they do like an Action Andretti in a random match on Dynamite, they've done it before. They've given it to somebody on the lower end. And then they've also given it to people where it's like, Hangman Adam Page wins these things. So anybody's guess is as good as anybody else's, unless they start announcing the people. It's, you're flying blind. But maybe it's like somebody specifically for Copeland or Cage, like that they really want to move to the next thing. I don't know, but I like battle royals, so I'm down for that.
So they have not yet announced FTR versus Black and Buddy, which means to me, hey, Buddy would make a hell of a match for either Edge or Christian, as would Malachi. There's also all the Lucha guys who I'm sure can fly around either one of those two and have a really good match. And then there's like, I'm sure people would groan because it's 2024 in a couple days, but like Jeff Hardy could win this, and this could be a cheap way to get Jeff Hardy versus either Edge or Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of options here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a fun little battle royal, depending on who's in it, but they've got 20 men to choose from, so I'm sure they'll be able to stack it with enough talent. I think the obvious one that hasn't been mentioned yet is that Killswitch wins the battle royal.
Could definitely be him. Could be Nick Wayne.
I'm leaning towards either Killswitch or Nick Wayne at the moment.
I hear you. But hear me. Jeff Jarrett. No?
I hear you.
I mean, I heard. I just don't want to respond to it.
but hear me, Repo Man.
I mean, I'm pretty sure in Callum's eyes they're the same person.
So there are 3 more matches I think that they had added. One of them being Swerve Strickland against Keith Lee. They're finally getting around to doing that. Months too late in my book.
Months?
Yeah.
Try a year, bro. Like
that's many months. I don't care about this anymore. Swerve has to win, will win. Keith Lee's not what he used to be, and the fact that they're just doing this now is just kind of like, I don't know why they waited so long, and then they just went, I don't know, let's do that one.
I think they made a mistake by not, I don't know if Keith Lee wasn't around or whatever, but I think Keith Lee should have absolutely cost Swerve the match. I think these two should be like Shawn and Hunter in 2004, where it's on site, doesn't matter what they're doing storyline wise. The minute they lock eyes in any situation, they're fighting.
You couldn't cost them the match. There's no interference allowed in Continental Classic matches.
But it's a triple threat.
So just because it's not DQ, there's still the rule in place that you can't interfere. The interference rule is the basis that, well, in kayfabe, if anyone interferes, they're fired from the company. So
okay, fine, I hear you. But that bell should have rang, and then Keith Lee should have pounced Swerve Strickland into the crowd. You know what I mean? Like there should have been like some level of intensity. I get what you're saying, and I know that the history and what the fans know will carry it, but I would have liked to see a little more gas in the fire.
I mean, I think this is fine. We all know what the result is going to be, so we just have to hope that the match is good. I don't think that doing it super sooner would have made it significantly better, because Swerve should have won either way. So yeah, it's cool to finally put some kind of, like, you end the year putting a ribbon on this.
Oh, it's a ribbon match.
Any guesses on whether we see Parker or Trench?
I would hope not. Yeah, Swerve's got to win this. He will. He should. You know, the way that is.
He's got to win.
Miro against Andrade is another match that they added on here. And since I haven't been paying much attention to this feud, it's kind of a nothing thing for me. But the bits and pieces that I've watched, I haven't liked. So,
I mean, I'd argue you're better off going into this not having seen the story leading up to it.
It looks like it.
Hey,
yeah.
Look at that. Usually it's us telling Callum that. You see how that works?
But yeah, it's a pretty dumb story about how CJ wants to be managing Miro. Miro doesn't want to be managed by CJ, but then he wants to attack everyone that CJ manages, so he just doesn't want CJ managing at all. Like, essentially, Miro doesn't want CJ there at all, but CJ wants to be there, and Miro's trying to, and they're still married somehow. Like, through all of this, like, beside the guy saying, "Oh yeah, you can't manage anybody, and I don't want you right in the wrestling business. See you at home, honey." That kind of weird dynamic. And Miro's going to win this match because Miro doesn't lose matches.
I've said this before. CJ has said this stuff in interviews where she's like, "Yeah, that's just how Miro is. Like, he didn't want her competing in Money in the Bank matches, and she got to do stuff like that when he was fired." I don't love that we're spotlighting this story. I'll say it again. It's just super awkward for me, and this isn't really my cup of tea. I hope they have a banger match, but either way, I can't imagine this will be too consequential.
Why are we doing a cuck story?
We're not. No, that's what they did. That's what they did over there.
There's absolutely no romantic interest between Andrade and CJ.
No, I mean, it doesn't come off to me like a romance between Andrade and CJ. It comes across to me like a variation of a cuck story where it's like Miro wants to have other dudes steal some attention from CJ and for him to kind of look bad. And I'm like, the more that those things happen with Miro and CJ, the more I'm like, is that a thing for them?
I mean, that's definitely not how the story's going.
I mean, I think what Tony's trying to say, correct me if I'm wrong, is he thinks that they like storylines where she's with other dudes.
Yeah.
Because he says no and she defies him.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's not their call for necessarily doing like the Bobby Lashley story, but they've had multiple, like, Ziggler being with her and Lashley with her and whatever. And now if he's got creative control and he's like, I know the story I want to tell is we have marriage issues and whatever, it's kind of like, it gives me that impression that maybe you're into that a little bit. I don't know. But I don't want that on my screen necessarily for a few.
They're doing a good job of it not being, hey, she's got the hots for Andrade or vice versa. And they're keeping it professional. But either way, I don't like any variation, whatever lens you look at it. I don't like this story. If CJ was going to come in, manage Redeemer Miro, and kind of be like his control, where, all right, he's killing a guy and she tells him to get off. And
yeah,
then he does.
And then he's like, I can only get off if. And then they.
That's one thing. But like this story, because remember, the story they were telling originally was my wife only wants a champion. She's kicked me out of my house because I lost the TNT title. And then suddenly she shows up and he's like, you're not real. Just kidding. I just don't want you here. None of it makes sense. And I've lost a lot of interest in the Miro character.
Yeah, I'm not digging it. And to me, it's like flip a coin. You know, like Andrade can win and make.
No, he can't. Because Miro doesn't lose matches. Because Miro doesn't lose matches.
I mean, if he is saying like I refuse to lose, and
how the fuck
behind
did
the scenes,
he get that? If that is true, how did he get that deal? Where he's just like
the Hulk Hogan deal.
Because they decided to sign him on a 5-year contract, and he's been obviously away for a good portion of that. But now he's back, and it's basically common knowledge now. It's in all reports and things of that ilk that he refuses the job. So unless it's like a big deal, like he sees himself as like a main boss character, where like if you lose, it has to be after a really long time against someone like the TNT title. Eventually, he had to lose the TNT title, but he had a long run with it, and they told the story of his neck gradually deteriorating, so Sammy Guevara could eventually get the victory over him. So that's like, yeah, that's a long-term story, and that's an appropriate time to job. This is just like the first match in a storyline which hasn't really been going anywhere or hasn't had much to it because Andrade's been too busy on the Continental Classic. So of course Miro's not gonna lose this one. He didn't lose to Powerhouse Hobbs, even though Hobbs was the right call to make because Hobbs is the one who's got more long-term potential in the company. So he's not going to lose to Andrade. Andrade wants, by all accounts, wants out as much as Miro does. So
what we're saying is Miro wins here in about 15 months. Andrade and Charlotte beat Lana and Rusev at WrestleMania or something.
Oddball scenarios. But this makes perfect sense. The other match that they added to the card, the All-Star 8-man tag team match, where all the people that were in the Continental Classic that didn't really make it are basically being thrown in together. And it's like, all right, cool. You got Claudio, Bryan Danielson, Mark Briscoe, and Daniel Garcia against Jay White, Jay Lethal, and 2 other people not named Jay, Roosh and Brody King. It's combine those people and toss them in there, and yeah, good talent. They're going to have a good match. Doesn't mean anything, but that's okay.
Yeah, this is just like a fun little New Japan-y style tag match that they would throw together after a G1 or something of that ilk. So yeah, this is what I wanted to see, just to put some of those great guys on the card. And I'm interested in the most interesting thing for me beyond the match itself. It doesn't really matter who wins. You can go either way, but it's the configuration of the teams. Because I would have anticipated, based on what I've seen in the build-up to it, that Garcia would be on the heel side and Roosh would be on the babyface side. It's interesting that Roosh is on the heels and Garcia's on the babyface too.
See, I would have just went with a simple blue versus gold.
Yeah, that's what would have been like the easier way of doing it.
But I think the long-term plan here is to get Garcia in front of Danielson, and to maybe they specifically take an interest in Garcia, and they're like, no more dancing. You are a wrestler. You're gonna wrestle.
I think that the results, as far as like just predictions go, it could go either way, and it's perfectly fine. But I think I would personally rather see the Danielson side win.
I would as well, and I think they're going to.
Yeah, I think babyfaces will win that one. But usually when it's one of those ones you can kind of throw in the air, I usually tend to lean towards the babyfaces.
And then I think that's all the additions that they've done to the card, if I remember correctly.
Yep, for the time being.
At least,
there's no collision, so...
Yeah, no collision.
I still expect a women's tag match to be added so that Stat and Willow can compete in their hometown. but that's about it.
Against
That might be on the kickoff against
Sky Blue and
well, it can't be Julia because Julia's defending the title,
right.
And it probably won't be Sky either because of her probably being out there for the match.
What did I say on the other predictions? Those two against Mercedes Diamante and put Rosa and Sky on either end.
That's right.
I mean, they just you could do that, but as I said, they just had that blow off street fight between them, so I don't know if they'll go back to that soon.
Well, let's pivot over to
show and a lot of fun.
And they added some more good stuff to the card instead of it being like a bunch of nonsense for the sake of it. These things make sense to be on the card. Makes sense instead of nonsense. Look at that. Let's switch to New Japan discussion and get into two of the little topics not two little topics, but two topics based off of New Japan. One of them being, and this is something you guys are going to definitely have to fill me in more on, but Hiroshi Tanahashi was named President and Representative Director of New Japan. What does that technically mean as far as that position of power? Does that put him in like a sort of like Adam Pearce type role? Is it actually just fully behind the scenes, or is it like an on-air kind of thing?
He's the president of New Japan Pro Wrestling now.
Like the ipso facto.
He's legitimately the president of New Japan Pro Wrestling.
So he's like in control of everything in the sense of like Tony Khan, it's for AEW.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not being the like financial backer.
No, correct. That's Bushi Road, yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, essentially, there's been a lot that's come out in the days following the announcement. Obviously, it's a big deal that a on-air talent who will still be wrestling, and he's already said that he will still be wrestling. He's still a champion in New Japan at the moment. So, and he still has plans on the world title and everything like that. So, I guess it might be easier to do now that he's president. That he can just make those matches and just say, "Hey, this week I'll also give myself a shot at the New Japan World Championship." But I think that it is an interesting choice. Like, there's nobody in the company right now that is more New Japan than Tanahashi, so it makes sense in that regard. It's harking back to the times of Inoki being the president of New Japan. So there's a lot of resonance there, but more interesting that's come out is just how the former president, what's his name, Takami Obari, is that he was quite unpopular among certain people in New Japan Pro Wrestling. One of them, most notably, being Okada, who, at least by what the Wrestling Observer newsletter said in their most recent issue, kind of pushed for his removal from the company. So maybe this is one of the steps that they've taken to ensure that Okada re-signs with New Japan Pro Wrestling by having a new person in the presidency position, someone who is like very well respected and has a wrestler's insight and probably understands Okada's worth more than Obari, who apparently that was like one of the big talking points, was that he didn't understand wrestling as well as potentially should do, considering you're the president of a pro wrestling company, and that he didn't really understand the value that Okada had for New Japan, which is bizarre considering he's their biggest name. But
even if you don't get wrestling, you should be able to look at the numbers.
I think there was something I heard about, because there seems to be like this whole Bushi Road thing seems to be like a bit of a madhouse behind the scenes with the previous president. I can't remember that guy's name off the top of my head, but when he was brought in, he didn't seem to understand the concept of why they were heels in wrestling.
Was it Harold May that was like?
Yeah, Harold May, that's it. Yeah, at least that I heard that stuff through other podcasts and mediums. Yeah, they just didn't understand. His basically argument was, why don't we just make all of our wrestlers baby faces and put super popular guys that sell merchandise? It's like,
all right.
I hate these types of people getting control of companies these days and just not understanding how anything works.
People should be like the people in charge of wrestling companies should know at least to have a desire to learn about pro wrestling in order to get an understanding of it. But yeah, now you have a guy in charge who definitely gets professional wrestling probably better than anybody in New Japan right now. That's the guy that you want leading the company, or at least leading it from a symbolic stature, if nothing else.
I think that's great.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what direction they end up taking under his direction. But it should be hopefully at least more wrestler focused, or should help ease a few tensions behind the scenes. Because as I say, Bushiroad, both from the New Japan's perspective, and there've been some issues in Stardom as well in terms of the scheduling and how much of a strain that's putting on their rosters' bodies, because they've suffered a lot of injuries in the latter half of the year. Maybe this will take it into a more wrestler focused and wrestler beneficial direction.
Cool.
I'm curious to see like what the difference is between their point of view of like working with like Forbidden Door and different things. Like, there's going to be changes, and that could be like way more for the better and stuff, or it could be kind of just the way that things are going as they normally go and whatever. But I'd be curious to see what differences there are from my outsider's perspective. And as far as an outsider's perspective, you're going to hear that quite a bit here when we talk about our predictions for Wrestle Kingdom. So let's start breaking this down. We got 11 matches, and you will hear my completely devoid of any rational analysis on my end, and then these two guys will be able to actually talk about what's going on. But the New Japan Rambo, of course, on the pre-show. Nobody's been announced that I can see, but is there anybody standing out to you guys that could potentially win that?
Well, the way they usually do this, the Rambos these days, are to determine who's going to be competing for the King of Pro Wrestling Championship at New Year Dash, which is their. So what will happen is that there won't be one winner of this match. There'll be 4 winners of this match, because if they follow the pattern they have done in previous years, the inaugural King of Pro Wrestling for 2024 is determined in a fatal 4-way match at New Year's Dash. So I imagine, I'm just looking at you kind of have to go based on the people who aren't already booked in matches, and I would assume that one of those 4 will be the current King of Pro Wrestling champion, which is Taichi. Will probably be one of the 4 people that wins this. Shingo Takagi, I would say, has a good shot of doing it because he's not involved in any of these ones yet. Oh, actually, no,
he's on the card.
Title. Yeah, sorry, forgot that he's a champion at this point. I was trying to avoid that match. Maybe Toriano. He's not involved in anything, and he was the inaugural King of Pro Wrestling champion, so he's usually a safe bet for this one. Got guys like Yuji Nagata and Minoru Suzuki that might be involved in it. You never know with some of the older guards. Maybe someone like maybe Gabe Kidd and not Clark Connors. What's his name? Alex Coughlin. The War Dogs of Bullet Club would be involved in this.
Well, Clark Connors is already on the card.
Yeah, I'd say Alex Coughlin. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I said, yeah, because there's like a few of them that are a bit like somewhat interchangeable, but yeah, I'd say Gabe Kidd could be a good option for this one. Trying to think of anyone else that's like stand out, like maybe Sho or Kanemaru from the House of Torture. Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's pretty much like a bit of a crapshoot. Like there's 20 people. There's probably gonna be 20 people involved, and the top 4 could be pretty much anybody. The King of Pro Wrestling title was just their gimmicky little belt, so it doesn't really matter who's involved or who's competing for it at New Year Dash in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I'm way more in the Tony camp this year because I haven't watched as much New Japan. So I'm gonna say I like what Callum is saying, and Taichi will probably keep it in the end.
There is an IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Title match. Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney against TJP and Francesco Akira. Is it catch 22 or is it catch 2 the dash 2? Or
I believe it's catch 22.
I mean, it's supposed to be catch 22, I'm assuming, but I don't know why they've got the 2 dash 2. I don't know anything about it, so I don't know. Bullet Club War Dogs win.
I would like these belts to go away, but Bullet Club War Dogs win.
I mean, there's an argument that the belts go away. I'd argue that this is actually probably one of the best built matches on the entire show in terms of actually like a good feud leading into this. So I'd say that you're probably going to have Catch 2 win the titles back. They lost them to the Bullet Club War Dogs around about the summer of this year. They'll probably win it back. That's been like the build up towards it. It should be a super fun match. These two teams have had some really good matches over the past year. So, as I say, I'm not a huge fan of having the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag titles around when they don't really put a huge amount of focus on the actual tag championships in general anyway. But this will be a fun opener for the show.
Because it is pretty much going to go in this order, right? That's what they usually do.
Yeah. The order that you see is going to be the order of the show.
So that would mean the next step would be the World Television title match, Zack Sabre Jr. against Hiroshi Tanahashi. Look at that. He booked himself in a match. But I'd assume Zack Sabre Jr. would retain, but then again, I don't know what's going on. So is this looking more like Tanahashi would be the new champion, or is it just kind of like we got to figure out a spot for him on the card, and that makes sense?
I think it's probably more of the latter, but that's not to say that Tanahashi it's unlikely for him to win. Sato Jr. won this title a year ago and has held it ever since. So he won it at last year's Wrestle Kingdom, so he's going into it after a year-long reign with the title. So you would think that there may be a possibility that he drops it now. It's just that it always comes back to the inaugural message that behind the television championship was supposed to be aimed towards younger wrestlers and a more fast-paced style. And then and then it's against Tanahashi, who is, fast pace is probably not one of the words in his vocabulary right now. This should be, it should be fine. It should be a very good match, but these two wrestle so often. I think this is the 11th or 12th time they've wrestled in New Japan in a singles match. It's like, it feels like very much just a control exercise rather than trying to push anyone particularly new or interesting into this position. So, but yeah, I could easily see Tanahashi win it just because Zack's held it for a very long time and they might decide, okay, we'll go from one. And realistically, if you're going to push Zack Sabre Jr. to a higher level, then he probably shouldn't be attached to this title too much longer. And I think that there should be an argument to be made that Zack Sabre Jr. should be fighting for the world title more consistently, or at least be positioned more as a main eventer in New Japan moving forward. He's done a lot of good job to establish this title. So passing on to Tanahashi, who can just hold it for a month or two before passing it on to someone else, might make a lot of sense. So I probably would lean towards Tanahashi winning, but Zack is probably the right choice, but they might just go with Tanahashi just to change it up.
I'm going to go Zack, but I do agree with what you're saying that Tanahashi could win, but he won't be champion for long. But I'm going to say Zack keeps it.
This is a very stupid question to just ask. Is there a Zack Sabre Sr.?
I'm sure there is, but
well, presumably it's whoever what Zack Sabre Jr.'s real name is, because his real name's Luke James. Luke James Eatwell is his real name. So I presume his father has the same name. And he just called himself Junior to carry on the thing.
Huh. Luke James Uggles Eatwell. That's a name. After that is Yotatsuji against Yuya Uemura. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Right?
Yeah.
I no fucking clue.
So these are just two of the kind of younger guys in New Japan that have been coming up this year. And they've just thrown them two together in a singles match because why not? That's literally the rationale behind this one. It's just like, these two, we kind of have built these two up, but then we decided that we're not actually going to give them anything of substance on this card. So why don't we just put them in a match?
Yeah. I think Yotatsuji is tremendous. And I think he could be higher up on the card. And I think he's going to win easily.
I think Tsuji should win this match. I don't think it's like a foregone conclusion, but yeah, hopefully at least they have a good. The most important thing is that they have a good showing, especially Umura, who has been one of the later arrivals back to New Japan after his excursion in TNA. So I think Tsuji should win, and yeah, just hopefully it's a good match. But there's really not much riding on it, at least not at the moment.
There is a generic tag team match, it seems. House of Torture against Shota Umino and Kaito Kiyomiya.
Yep.
Don't know Kiyomiya. I know a little bit about Shota Umino. I know a little bit about Evil. I've been hearing some stuff about the Red Narita that you guys have been mentioning here and there, but House of Torture is another blind thing for me. So
just by blind thing for everybody else.
Just kind of blah.
No, I mean, there is a story leading into this one. So Shota Umino and Ren Narita were teaming together in the World Tag League, and then they didn't win the World Tag League. And in one of the final matches, Ren Narita turned on Shota and joined the House of Torture. So that's added some fuel into this. And then House of Torture went over to Noah, and they assaulted Kaito Kiyomiya and a few other Noah guys, because Kaito Kiyomiya is a Noah wrestler. He's not a New Japan wrestler. So they decided to essentially attack on their turf, and then Kaito Kiyomiya and some other Noah guys invaded New Japan to attack House Torture, and they helped out Shota Umino. And so basically Shota Umino and the kind of the main young face of Noah in Kaito Kiyomiya are going to be taking on House of Torture here. Again, it should be fun. I'm not a huge fan of House of Torture in general, particularly not Evil, and yeah, Ren Narita is a bit like bland. Like the idea is that he's supposed to be like the reincarnation of Shibata, but he's not as good as Shibata, not even at this age. Like he's a young guy, but Shibata was better than him at his age, and he's lacking intensity. So, and I think joining the House of Torture isn't going to give him that intensity. I think it's almost like them. I would say holding up a white flag on him, holding up a flag on him and saying, okay, we're going to like switch it up and see if we can give him a personality by being in line with House of Torture. But either way, I don't think it's really working out for him as well as the other two. The other two Reiwa Musketeers that they crowned earlier this year in Shota Umino and Yota Tsuji have a much higher ceiling than Ren Narita does. So I'd hope that Umino and Kiyomiya win here, because I assume that Kiyomiya is probably going to join New Japan at some point in 2024, because Noah have absolutely screwed him in terms of his booking there. He should be like their definitive, not just I would say world champion all the time, but should be their ace of their company, and he just hasn't been given that responsibility for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't want to see the House of Torture win anything, so go Shooter and Kiyomiya.
Think we're gonna get any title change with the never open weight championship?
Man, I don't care. First of all,
yeah. This is the match I'm probably least interested in the entire show.
Like I watched the match where Takagi won the belt
from Tama Tonga.
And like I don't care to see it again so soon.
And
he only won the belt from Tama Tonga like a month and a half ago.
And by the way, fucking grow out the beard again. Can we get like the swagger back in Tama Tonga? This clean shaven babyface thing don't do it for me. I don't know about you, Callum.
I mean, this is the thing that a lot of people tend to do is say like, oh, he's super popular with the Japanese audience, and obviously that's the one that matters the most because that's where they're based. But like, just from an outsider perspective, who watches New Japan semi-frequently, it's like he just doesn't have anything about him. Like, it's like he had a bit of swag when he was part of Guerrilla's Destiny. I thought Guerrilla's Destiny were always an overrated tag team anyway. But like, he's a perfectly serviceable C+ wrestler. But they seem to always be positioning him as like a B+, A- type of guy. Like he just isn't at that level. And I don't, especially at this stage in his career, I don't think he ever will be. Like he must be at least approaching his 40s. Oh, he's 41 now. Like, yeah, at a point you just have to
41?
Yeah. So at this point, at this stage, you just have to look at that guy and just go, okay, he's hit his ceiling. There's not much more we're going to get out of this guy. He's not going to be a world champion. He's not going to be like a super top level guy. So let's just go back to Guerrillas of Destiny as a tag team, or do something else revolving around him in the more of a tag team scene, or him being like a gatekeeper-y type guy to introduce some new guys and have some feuds with them. But yeah, I think Shingo should retain the title here. But yeah, as a match, this does absolutely nothing for me.
Yeah. Who'd you say you think would have
Shingo wins. Shingo wins.
There's a unification match, winner takes all, tag titles, IWGP tag titles, and strong openweight tag titles. Bishamon against Guerrillas of Destiny.
Speaking of matches that we saw very, very recently, I mean, this was the finals of the World Tag League, which took place about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, yeah.
And they're just copying and pasting again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because Bishamon, who were the IWGP Tag Team Champions, won the World Tag League for the 3rd year in a row, and decided that they'll take on again the guys they beat in the finals in order to take their titles from them.
So do you think this is leaning towards them just kind of across the board getting rid of strong titles?
Potentially. I think this, I mean, obviously we'll see what happens with the Triple Crown moving forward. In this one, we don't know whether they'll just carry around both belts and defend them in different ways. I mean, they're still doing shows in America moving forward, because they're going to be doing Trish Adora versus Julia at the next American show, based on what happened at the Stardom show earlier today.
So the funny thing is as you mentioned that, I just realized there's a fucking chance that by the time we get to Collision on next Saturday, that Mox has 4 titles. And now I'm thinking about like, oh, are we getting rid of Strong by merging it into that fucking global thing that they're doing? What are we doing?
I mean, there might just be a case that the Strong hasn't proven to be sustainable. So they might just be taking these steps of unifying it here with the IWGP tag titles and then just moving on from it, and it will just gradually, Strong will eventually just subside. I mean, you don't need it realistically unless you are going to have a more permanent presence in the US, and if they're just coming back to just tour every now and again, like maybe once a month or every 2 months or so, then I don't think you necessarily need to have a promotion dedicated to it anymore. So I'd say the likelihood is Bishamon win again here and take both titles. It wouldn't be out of the question for Hikuleo and El Fantasmo to win, but they'll probably go with the safer pair of hands.
How old's Hikuleo? I'm going to look. All right, he was born in
He's
32. All right. So there's still a lot that he can accomplish. Yeah, Bishamon win. I really like, again, this year more than any other, the last 6, I've been completely disconnected from New Japan. But I imagine Bishamon would be better champions moving forward.
El Desperado has a title match against Hiromu Takahashi, IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. Another thing that I don't know anything about, so break it down. What's happening here?
Well, essentially, it's another default kind of thing for New Japan. Say like, oh, here's our 2 most popular junior guys. Let's just put them in the match together because we can't think of anything more interesting.
So for the most part, this has been, for like a Wrestle Kingdom show, the equivalent of when WWE's like, I don't know, it's SummerSlam and we got these people, we could just do that. Like, it's not coming across as like a really solid show. It's just sort of all the default options.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that. I mean, Takahashi's been champion for most of the year. Again, like he's a perfect like standard bearer for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. He's done a lot to hold on to it. I think he's probably gonna hold on to it here because they keep we'll talk about it when we get to the main event, but they keep talking about how he wants to fight with like Tetsuya Naito at the anniversary show for the World Championship. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, but I think that the likelihood is they'll have Takahashi retain here. But, you know, Despi is super popular in New Japan as well, so it's not out of the question that he wins it back. These two have basically just been a loggerhead to the title for the last 2+ years. and some other guys have gone into the fray, but there really needs to be like a freshening up of their junior division. It's really, really stagnant, and these two are just constantly positioned towards the top and in some ways I sympathise with New Japan because just nobody else is breaking through enough as an established enough name, but they also just like you need to find people to fill those gaps, and you've got plenty of people that you've just kind of tied into your like the junior tag things. I mean, fucking TJP is stuck in the more in the tag team division. You could put him in there. They've got some other new guys coming through, like Callum Newman, Will Ospreay's protege, is now established in New Japan. So I imagine he'll be moving up the ranks when he starts to get things together. You've got like Master Watto, still got who's done a lot of growing in the past year, so he could definitely like step up to this level at some point. He had a good match with Tanahashi for the title early this year. So there are people that potentially stepping up, but they need to start like it's one of the big things in New Japan recently. They need to start moving on certain things. It just feels like a lot of things are in a holding pattern right now. They just seem hesitant to really push a lot of the newer, interesting guys that they have in terms of favouring the status quo.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be better under Tanahashi?
Hopefully, because he understands.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like he's the president, and so he will have definitely power behind the scenes. But I don't know how much of that is dictated by him, and how much of that will be dictated by Bushiroad. So.
Well, 3 matches I can talk a little bit about. There's that IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship 3-way. Will Ospreay versus Jon Moxley versus David Finlay. I don't anticipate what Rob's just talking about of Moxley coming into this, holding 3 belts, and then at all. I mean, I think that Kingston's winning, but even if that was the case, I don't think he would also win the Global Heavyweight Championship, just carry 4 belts around. It's, stranger things have happened, so it's not completely guaranteed that wouldn't, but I would look at this and think, if Ospreay is switching over to AEW, he's probably not going to be wrestling for New Japan in a way that they would want to keep the belt on him. Doesn't mean that it's not a possibility, but I would think either Moxley wins this and continues to just kind of pop up for both companies, or that they just go with the safe Finley's in the company, let's give it to him option.
I'm going to say that the more I think about it, there's a good chance Mox does win on Saturday and then again on Thursday, and then it's Ospreay versus Mox at Revolution. Or I'm going to say they give it to Ospreay. I think Finlay is here to be a red herring, and everybody will think, well, Finley's the one guy here that isn't contracted to AEW. But I'm going to say Moxley wins, but if not Moxley, Ospreay.
No, this match and just the whole introduction of the global championship has irked a lot of hardcore New Japan fans who are already pretty, I don't say anti-AEW, but are kind of feeling that they're getting the short end of the stick with this relationship with AEW most of the time. And this match is kind of a typification of that, because you've got a guy that will be joining AEW very shortly, a guy that is firmly in AEW, and then the bastion for New Japan Pro Wrestling in this match is one of the least popular guys and the least compelling characters on the entire roster. Like David Finlay's run as Bullet Club leader in New Japan has just been an absolute disaster. Like he doesn't have it. And the fact is, he used to actually be quite an interesting, or like have a bit of spark about him. But then as soon as he's joined Bullet Club, he's just tried to be Jay White. And he's not Jay White. He's just, I say, like he should be a heel version of David Finlay rather than trying to just cosplay as Jay White, and it just hasn't worked out well for him at all. But for some reason, the company is super behind him, and I think the likelihood is they'll have him win this title here. I say I'd rather just from an interesting match standpoint to be one of the other two, but I think that they'll try and use this as another springboard for David Finlay's future as the Bullet Club leader. So I'm going to go with Finlay wins the title here.
What about you, Tony?
I would think that it's probably going to be Finlay. Like, depending on the contracts of Ospreay and Moxley, if they do have any plans to continue working cross-promotionally, they would make more sense, but it's hard for me to not just assume that everybody's going to go with the in-house person. I don't know anything about Finlay, so like it might be the type of thing where it's like, yeah, we can't give it to him. Yeah. I would say also, I think Kazuchika Okada is beating Bryan Danielson.
Yeah, I'd say that's the most likely outcome for this. So again, this has been pretty well built with the video packages leading up to it, and Danielson's kind of added fuel to it in the sense that even though he won the previous match for Okada and he also won the tag team match followed it, he's basically saying that he's going out for revenge on Okada because Okada, even though he's won those matches, Okada's injured him both times. Well, at least that's the story they've got going into it. So he basically said, this is the last year of my career and Okada's robbed me of several months of it because he broke my arm and he busted up my eye. So basically Danielson's almost feels like he's going into this as a guy looking to get the win back rather than the guy who won the previous one and is coming into this. But he's going into hurt Okada. I think this hopefully will be a step up. I still thought their match at Forbidden Door was a lot of fun, but hopefully I think this will be a step up from it being in the Tokyo Dome. This must be a great experience for Danielson because I don't think he's ever wrestled in the Tokyo Dome before, or at least not on a Wrestle Kingdom show. So this should be a great experience for him. Should be a great match, and yeah, Okada should get the victory here. And it should also be something that they use to fuel the continual, like, Danielson getting frustrated with himself and disappointed about, like, basically desperately trying to get a championship under his belt or get a big win under his belt before he retires. So, but yeah, that's like, this is one of the matches that I'm most looking for. Well, probably actually the match that I'm most looking forward to on the entire show.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
What about you,
I
Rob?
don't know, man. Danielson doesn't slow the fuck down, and he'd be doing interviews like, my arm's still not healed. It's like, because you're not fucking stop working so that you can have like a good run and you don't get hurt again. I hope he doesn't get hurt again, first of all, in any match that he has from now until the end of time. But it should be a damn good match. This is at a stage where they're gonna want to steal it. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to, maybe even more than at Forbidden Door, they're gonna want to steal the show. I think this might be the early contender for match of the year. And I think, honestly, it should go on last. I know that Okada said he'd be okay with a poll about it, but I think Naito might actually go ballistic if he lost another one of those. So they probably won't do that. But this is the match tonight for a lot of people, I'm sure, myself included. And Okada wins. All right, that's the main event. We don't have to talk about any other match on this show.
Well, Sonata is defending that world championship against Tetsuya Naito. And you guys have been calling this a long time in the past about that it would just be like, all right, Naito against Sonata, and I'm assuming that Naito wins, right?
Well, Callum called it. I was like,
there's no way they're taking the Sonata's taking the world title to the Wrestle Kingdom main event.
Yeah, I had hopes, but here we are, and Naito wins, but he doesn't have knees. So, like, can Naito win? I want to get to the next era. I want to get to the next champion. I want to get to a new champion. I think I'd like to see Zack Sabre Jr. with that belt. I'd like to see Yota Tsuji climb the ranks. I have no interest in really either one of these two dudes being champion. I think Naito's best run was with the now defunct IWGP IC title. And Sonata, I really liked at one point. And he's kind of just Let's put it this way. You wrestled Jack Perry at Forbidden Door. Jack Perry's been gone since All Out, and no one's really asked, hey, what's up with this guy? And I think it's the same thing for Sonata in the eyes of some people. He's champion, but do people care?
Yeah, it's been a very deflating title reign. He hasn't really done anything of significance or note throughout the entire time as champion. But they had him beat Okada in a bit of a surprise result, and he joined his own, became the leader of his own faction, and that was supposed to catapult him to the next level. And he just hasn't taken the ball and run with it as the way that people might have hoped, or just seen a bit more intensity or fire or something different from him. But he's just, he's very laid back, and he's just kind of, he's not going to exert himself too much, which just doesn't really strike me as, like, you could be a champion of other promotions like that, and you could be a more mid-tier champion in New Japan with that and have that attitude, and that's totally fine. But to be a world champion, there's a certain standard, and I don't think that he lives up to it, particularly when it comes to match quality. I'm sure this match will be good because they'll have fought it out for a while, and Naito always, despite how broken his body seemingly is at this stage of his career, he always pulls it out in the biggest matches. In the case with, it helps when you've got Will Ospreay as a dance partner, but when they had that the G1 climax final earlier this year, that was one of the best matches of the entire year, especially for New Japan. Obviously that's basically what Ospreay does, is give you your best match of the year pretty much for anybody, but I'm sure Naito will bring that same intensity in this one. It's whether Sonata can kind of live up to Naito's aura in this match, because I think Naito's aura is going to be the thing that carries this match more than anything else, and whether Sonata can live up to that. And if he can, then I'm sure it'll be a good match and it will exceed people's expectations. But just going into it, it's like the flattest main event from any Wrestle Kingdom that I've seen since following New Japan more closely. So yeah, but it's not one that I'm especially looking forward to, but we'll see if they can. But it's the one that has the best potential out of the ones that I'm not super excited about to prove me wrong. But yeah, Naito's definitely winning. There's no chance of Sonata's retaining this one.
Well, of course, we will see what happens on pay-per-view. I was going to say pay-per-view night, but pay-per-view morning, I guess. I don't know if we're going to do anything as far as a post-show type thing or not. It's sort of up in the air, but if it is...
I won't be watching it. I won't be watching it live because I'll be at work that day, so...
Yeah, we'll do... True. Next week on the Hot Tags, we'll give you our quick thoughts on Wrestle Kingdom.
Most likely that's what the setup's going to be, so stay tuned for all that. Let's move over to some other Hot Tags here. Let's talk about this 2023 NXT Year-End Awards. And these were things voted on by fans. They were only just a few categories, not as many categories or as awesome categories as the AEW and WWE End of the Year Awards and Smark moment. But here are the winners of what was chosen for these different categories. Tag Team of the Year went to the Creed Brothers, which is kind of interesting to me because they ended up spending a good portion of it not on NXT. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think almost any of these were justified as the picks. Female Superstar of the Year, Tiffany Stratton, probably the one that makes the most sense. Although I think that maybe Roxanne Perez could have potentially taken that. Male Superstar of the Year went to Ilya Dragunov. I don't know how it didn't go to Carmelo Hayes. That's a little strange to me.
You fell off pretty quickly, and it's what have you done for me lately? In the minds of most fans.
Yeah, I'd also say that Carmelo has been very quickly displaced in even his own tag team or his own affiliation with Trick Williams, and Trick's the bigger name out of the two of them now. So yeah, I think that's probably top of people's minds when they were voting. And Dragunov, I think, has probably been the most consistent in terms of match quality this year in NXT.
Well, he won Match of the Year, Hayes against Dragunov and No Mercy. And then Undertaker Arrives was the one for the Moment of the Year, which I don't know. I don't know if I'd necessarily go in that direction either, but
I think that's fine.
I feel like this was the worst year-end awards of NXT.
There was no look at these photos of people with their ring bells. And remember when the Undisputed Era had all of them and they had old belts, and that was such a cool fucking visual. And Gargano and Ciampa had NXT's gotten better than it was in September of 21, but I will never not miss the black and gold era.
Yeah. So I think that's overall just kind of one of those disappointing blah types of things that they put on TV this week. I've been thankful that they haven't been doing full shows and I don't have to watch as much.
Yeah, it's super cool that like SmackDown ain't gonna be shit tonight.
Right. I'm so looking forward to not watching SmackDown tonight. It's ridiculous. But what I did have fun watching, here are two other hot tags, are the WWE live event that happened at Madison Square Garden and the Iron Claw movie. So talk about those for a little bit. So that Madison Square Garden event wasn't planned to go to that. Didn't even know that it was actually happening until Frank from eWrestling News was just like, hey, I'm going to that with a friend of mine. Do you want to go? And I was like,
how do you not know?
Cool.
They literally run the Garden on December 26th every year, probably since I've like half my life.
Yeah. News to me. But this ended up being the most profitable non foreign house show that they've ever had, which is crazy. And when we were there, I mean, it was packed. People were super excited about every little thing, especially for CM Punk. But like, I mean, we got Punk versus Dominic Mysterio, and he can kind of work his way through that a little bit. It wasn't the best match in the world, to be perfectly honest, but you got to assume that that's just going to be the case. But it was a fun show. I ended up actually enjoying it a lot. They had moments here and there for like every title from Raw was defended except for Gunther's, which, by the way, another hot tag. Congrats to Gunther and Jinny on the birth of their son. That's awesome.
That rule.
And it was cool to be able to like fill in the blanks from what Frank wasn't aware of about like, oh, listen to the pop that's going to happen when Cody comes out, or like what his main takeaway out of everybody that had popped up, which there was, a couple different takeaways of things like Ricochet being really fun to watch, or Big Bronson Reed being big, but the number one person that he was like, yeah, this person's an absolute star for sure, was Rhea Ripley. And she was about as over as you could get compared to everybody else. I would say more than likely the three people that got the biggest reaction throughout the night were Cody, Punk, and Rhea. And, Kofi got a good pop and everything like that, but it just goes to show like how popular Rhea Ripley is. And it was a fun show. So, it's another one to add to my list.
More experiences like that? Like just being among legit casual fans? Because from my perspective, the only thing anybody was talking about from this show was people were going ballistic because they were chanting, "You still got it" at Punk. And people are like, how can they be so uneducated not to know that he was just competing in front of 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium? And it was that whole discussion of WWE fans aren't always, your tapped in smart fans. In New York City, you would think some of them might be, but you'd still have to expect, hey, people haven't seen CM Punk in years, and maybe they're not watching AEW. Maybe everybody wrote off AEW like it was Impact. Well,
for what it's worth, the people that were behind me were absolutely huge CM Punk fans, and I overheard them talking about how they don't watch AEW and that they stopped pretty much watching it once Punk left. And then they were like, getting into like specifics about like, I like a couple of the guys there. Powerhouse Hobbs is good, and like, that kind of a thing. But they were pretty much just like, yeah, I don't watch that anymore. And I'm sure that there's definitely some people that are like that. I'm sure there's some people that are like, oh, Punk's not there, I'm going to start watching, But the casuals and then the super, super dedicated people, it's fun to be around that because you can see people that they're not too familiar and they're just sort of watching and being like, oh, wow, this Ludwig Kaiser looks like a real asshole. Yeah. Without really knowing anything about him. And then you got the other people that are like the dude that was in front of me knew every single line of every single song and every like prompt that he could possibly do for a cheer. He had it ready to go. And, like he was as dedicated as he could possibly get. So it's cool to be around that kind of different environment and step outside that bubble a little bit. But I like that. And I like the Iron Claw. Now, I thought about doing like an actual just full-blown movie review over on fanboysanonymous.com, which, by the way, if you don't know what that is, go over to fanboysanonymous.com, check out that website. But that ended up being something that I was just like, I'm too busy, and I don't necessarily have that, so let me just put it on hot tags. I'm not going to spoil anything, although if you know the story, you know what happens, kind of. So it's not like, hey, by the way, the Titanic sank. But it's the aliens came and they sank it. They do make changes to the story. One of the brothers isn't even in the movie, which is interesting. But I'm not like a scholar on the Von Erich story. I knew bits and pieces, and I was familiar with little things here and there, but it was actually a legit solid movie. And there's that sort of thing that happens with movies that are based off of pro wrestling or like any kind of topic like that, where you might like it because it is about pro wrestling, and then other movies are like, well, it's about pro wrestling, but it sucks, but you might like it anyway or something. But comparing this to something like the Fighting with My Family, this was way better. And I recommend it for anybody that's interested in checking it out, whether you are a pro wrestling fan or even if you're not necessarily a big pro wrestling fan. I think it works just as a movie about just, brothers and emotionally abusive father and the tragedy that comes along with the Von Erich story. But I liked it. Caroline liked it. Some really good performances from people in there. So yeah, thumbs up. Check it out, everybody.
I've heard nothing but good things, which to me is shocking because I was just expecting the normal wrestling movie, criticisms, but people love this movie. A lot of people cried at this movie. I hear nothing but like I was in tears. I was like a baby by the end of it. And yeah, I think it'll be a good time. I haven't seen it yet, but I do plan on seeing it. Callum, do you plan on seeing it? I know you're not a movie guy.
I'll probably check it out at some point, probably when it comes to kind of a digital platform to watch.
Right
I'm probably not going to theaters to watch it. Just wait till it arrives on a Netflix or Prime or wherever it ends up going onto. Yeah, that's like I've heard very positive things about it. The only thing that I've seen negative, the thing that consistently seen negatively talked about it is two details. One, the complete erasure of Chris Von Erich from the movie, which is like they only really focus on David, Kevin, and Kerry as the Von Erich brothers,
and Michael,
Chris, and Michael, yeah, too. But Chris is kind of completely swept under the rug from it. So yeah, I've heard that was a bit of an issue. And then the guy they had playing Ric Flair.
Oh, the guy playing Ric Flair was terrible. Yeah, that's right. He just sucked. He didn't quite look the part. And, the hair was fine, but he didn't have the cadence down at all. Like, it seemed like if somebody would have watched a Ric Flair promo and then be like, but I'm going to do my own twist on it, rather than to actually do a Ric Flair impression, he was not good.
Yeah, so I'd say that one would only really affect people that watch wrestling more prominently to check that one out. But as I say, it seems to be something that can resonate both with wrestling fans and with just general fans, and it did perform very well at the box office. I think it was it number 8 for the weekend. So yeah, that's really good going for a wrestling movie.
I also, for the first time ever, watched The Condemned last night, which is awful. But that's the whole reason why I watched it.
Watch that.
Yeah, it's terrible. But that was the reason why I watched it, because it's like, yeah, let's watch a bad movie.
Is it on Plex?
It is on Plex.
All right.
So yeah, you can check it out. Let's move over to, let's say, this thing about NXT. So in the UK, they are on TNT Sports, and they're being taken off of it. So obviously, Callum understands this better than Rob and I do. But have you heard about that this is just up in the air until they sort out new deals, or is there supposed to be something in mind for people to be able to watch it in the meantime or something?
Well, the announcement is that it's going back to the WWE network.
Oh, it's just gonna be part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just been taken off TNT, and it's just going back to just be a pure network show.
Well, you know what? In some ways, it's better like that. Obviously, they want to get the promotional money and the advertisements for the commercials and all, but I miss the era of NXT being a part of that. I think that was better overall.
The 1 hour NXT on the network was the most fun, bingeable show ever.
Ever. In the history of shows.
In the history of wrestling shows.
As soon as the television was invented, it was invented for this reason.
That's right.
Well, that's one of those little side quest kind of hot tags. Another one here being some trademark news. Mercedes Mone, who there's more and more speculation. Is she going to be popping up at the Royal Rumble? Is she not? She's teasing things left and right. But she trademarked 3 different things here. Mone Talks, Mone Wear, and Time is Mone. I hate the whole Mone thing and all, so I'm not a big fan. But if she's trademarking more of that stuff, really? The Mone thing?
Since leaving? Yeah, I think it's very catchy. And look at all the stupid puns. I thought you would love this. Look at the puns.
I hate the theme song in particular the most. Just reminds me of something from like South Park.
It feels like, I think this is where you're going, that if she's trademarking these things, that she's probably not popping up at the Royal Rumble.
Right.
You never know with her. That'd be my first thing, but I would think that she has more she wants to accomplish outside of that system.
Boozer on Twitter is teasing it a lot. And most of the stuff that he's put out there has been right. So, I don't know. Something to pay attention to. But I highly doubt that she's popping up at the Royal Rumble as Mercedes Mone. She would be Sasha Banks.
Or would she? Or would they be like, look, if that's what we need to do to get you back here, you can be Mercedes Mone.
I hope not. I think that would be a little strange. Plus, I just don't want to hear that stupid theme song.
It's hard to really tell. Maybe she's doing these for more of a fashion line or something else associated outside of WWE. I'd say she could just come back and negotiate into a deal that she's going to have these separate brand deals and stuff going on.
She's going to be on Raw and SmackDown as a free agent. On Raw, she's Sasha Banks. On SmackDown, she's Mercedes Mone.
I mean, if she wants, Mone Wear to be her fashion line and what was it?
Time is Mone and Mone Talks.
Mone Talks could easily be a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And time, I don't know.
I sell clocks.
Yeah, I was thinking watches.
Designer watches, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's cool. Like, I think whatever she's doing, just get back in front of us, because, like, in this industry, you're forgotten quickly. I guess people like Punk are the exception to that, but, like, it feels like she hasn't done anything in forever.
So, another hot tag here, outside of getting into predictions for TV stuff. 2 people leaving AEW. Dana Massie, the wife of, I believe it's Matt Jackson, right?
It is Matt Jackson.
Who had been running like the merchandise and stuff. And Shawn Spears are both going to be out of All Elite Wrestling. And Spears had put something up about like, this is the right decision for my family or so, but that doesn't necessarily mean particularly like, okay, he's going to go to this company and that's why or something. But I believe Dana Massie is going to be working for Barclays, and this is her switch over is to do that, which, okay, cool for her. AEW's making some changes here and there. Some of them, I'm sure they're going to have growing pains, and some of them are going to be just for the better, and some of them are going to be for the worse, but I'm not at all surprised to see Shawn Spears leaving. He just hasn't been utilized in like 3 years, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, he started out as like a big deal for like a few months, and then they quickly just went, never mind.
I think it sucks because not that I'm like mourning the loss in 2024, but the idea that the guy who came in, it really felt like, okay, he can be somebody that they spotlight, and maybe fans can view him differently than they would have when he was Ty Dillinger. It very quickly went from he's in the semi-main of All Out to all right, he's in the pinnacle, so he's kind of top mid card heel, and then it was just nothing, which is a shame.
I think people would sell Shawn Spears' run in AEW short. I think that he has a ceiling. Like he was never going to be a top guy. Because he's a very solid wrestler, but there's a reason why he hasn't never climbed to the top of any other promotion he's been in, is because there's a certain disconnect there. He's better as a second or a henchman rather than on his own. And I think that like the best stuff that he did was attached to MJF and Wardlow as part of like being essentially the evil henchman to MJF, like his like almost like assistant type character, the gateway into getting MJF, with Wardlow being the more brick wall. He's the more cunning one. I thought the chairman stuff was good, and his entrance was really unique and dynamic for that point in time, especially after like trying to move away completely from the whole 10 Ty Dillinger thing to having that kind of I don't know how you describe it. It's almost like Singing in the Rain type aspect of just like when just the spotlight on top of him and him just whistling while sitting on the chair and then going into his actual entrance. I thought that his overall contributions to AEW were a net positive, and maybe it wasn't what he envisioned when he first joined there, but I think overall he did plenty of good stuff for AEW. And yeah, eventually you grow out and move on. He's towards the back end of his career now, you'd imagine. I imagine he'll focus potentially more on training unless he decides that he wants a shot at a more prominent position on a card somewhere, in which case I'm sure TNA would be more than happy to take him on.
Yep.
Is that where you guys think he's going to go?
Oh, I think he'll probably just be a performance center trainer.
That's where I was kind of thinking. I
mean, I'd like to see him in, like, give him one other shot on TNA, because I think that he could be positioned towards not exactly main event status, but he could definitely be a bigger fish in a smaller pond there. I wouldn't like to see him just hang it up completely, because I think he still has a lot to offer as a performer as well as like just a backstage trainer.
Well, I agree, but I also feel the same way about Breeze, who has seemed to largely just focus on that side of things.
Yeah, Breeze has like, he's still like got up, down, and all the other stuff associated with that as well. So I think it just depends on what Spears' priority is, because I don't know if we got this list down the whole text. I don't know if we remember discussed it, but like Cassie Lee's they're about to have another baby.
Yeah, shout out to them. They're gonna have a second child, and shout out to Billie Kay, Jessica McKay, for the birth of her son as well.
Look at that. That's awesome.
Beautiful things.
So yeah, so maybe the financial security that comes with being a performance center trainer will be good, but maybe he still wants to try it out. I say I don't want him to feel like just because he's no longer in AEW that there's a lot of other opportunities out there, especially with the money that TNA have been pushing out there for certain people. There might be an opening for him there, essentially. So.
Any more speculation on that Hard to Kill signing?
No, because Impact next week they're just going to do a best of TNA. The week after that they're probably just going to do a Hard to Kill preview. So we're just literally waiting for this thing to start. And I don't know. I'm excited for it. Shawn Spears would be a great addition. Be a cool way to kind of get some of your investment too, because I was going to call them the Acclaimed. That's not their names. The Iconics, the Inspiration, were with TNA or Impact, and they just decided that they wanted to step away from wrestling for a while. It's clearly worked out well for them. They're both focusing on their families, but it'd be nice to see more of them down the line.
I think just pivoting over to the Dana Massie one. That one is fairly interesting because it was reported that she was offered a new contract with AEW, but turned it down and is essentially going to move over to Barclays, as you mentioned. But I think the other thing that's reported in the Observer newsletter is that she had felt that her husband, Matt Jackson, and Nick Jackson hadn't been defended properly by the company in the light of the brawl out situation. So it's the idea of maybe that would have been a sticking point for her in potentially saying, no, I'm going to move away from this company, the company now, because I don't feel like you adequately stood up for essentially your EVPs in this whole situation and allowed the narrative to spiral. Well, you basically didn't take a stance on the narrative, and so allowed the narrative to just go in multiple different directions, where you basically got just a camp of people online that are fully supporting the Elite and the camp of people that are fully supporting CM Punk. And so you allowed that. That was just the story in the newsletter, is saying that it allowed a certain section of the fan base to vilify the Bucks as the main antagonist of this situation. So she probably wasn't particularly pleased if that turns out to be accurate. But then there's also the argument that I think a lot of I mentioned it, and I think other people have mentioned in the past, that AEW's merchandising has been atrocious.
Yeah.
In her tenure as the company, because they essentially, you hear these stories all the time of, you go to an AEW show and they've got like free shirts on sale for the same guys and they run out of stock immediately. So hopefully whoever they do bring in to replace her has a bit more of a, maybe this could be a positive, even if it wasn't their intention. It could be something that helps them grow in a more considerable way.
Hopefully they get somebody to fix that website too. That's a pain in the ass.
I don't know if they'd be involved in that side.
Okay, she's not. I was confused. She's not going to Barclays. Raphael Morphy, who was
that other guy,
the vice president of live events and touring, is going to the Barclays.
Oh, it's not Massie.
No, it's not. Because I was like, I don't think Dana was doing heavy stuff in that field prior to this, but that would be crazy if she was.
Yeah, so I read the report wrong then.
I think that there's something to be said for the idea, and I know the whole fucking feeling thing has been way overplayed already, but it is something to be said that Dana was in the early conversations. Brandy, Cody, there is a lot of that, like, yes, these growing pains were going to happen, but I don't know if people expected a lot of the complete shedding of the people who were on the ground floor, as there kind of has been. To me, at least, it feels like the Bucks have completely settled into a role of, we're wrestlers and we're going to have fun doing wrestling, and that's it. I think Kenny's still working with women when he can, but I think that's a huge move in the sense that she was there from the start. Again, I hope that the reports of her feeling let down by the company are untrue, only in that, hey man, the whole family aspect of it was a lot of what helped the company grow from the beginning. But maybe let's keep an eye on that KTB wrestling trademark.
Mm-hmm. Could be a backup plan to just get out there and do some stuff on their own, and maybe flex their EVP kind of stuff there if they can't do it in AEW. So I'm more suspicious of that than I ever was now that this happened. I'll say that. Let's round out our hot tags this week, though, with our predictions and thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, whatever it might be, for this New Year's Knockouts week that WWE is putting on. They got special episodes of Raw, NXT, and SmackDown, and they got some other stuff too, but really, yeah, none of that stuff matters. But
well, one of them might.
Which one?
There is a live. They're making a point to be like, we're gonna do a live preview on Peacock for 2024, and I'm like, why? Hey, why are you doing that? What do you have planned for a live preview for 2024? That'll be on Thursday, I believe. So maybe, maybe they'll do something crazy like, and Brock declares for the Royal Rumble, or just something noteworthy.
Maybe they'll announce some pay-per-views coming up. Coming up this year in 2024, we're going to bring back that King and Queen of the Ring tournament or something. They should announce something, because if if the preview special is just basically remember Royal Rumble's coming up in a few weeks, Mania's coming up, and that's about it and stuff, that'll be really disappointing. But I'm not going to bother to watch it. I'm going to leave that up to other people to watch it and say, this is the interesting thing that happened on there. So, Rob,
just
you're going to have to do
hate
it.
Me. Just say you hate me. How about that, Tony? No, but
you're going to have to watch it.
One thing I am super excited for is Day 1, New Year's Evil, and SmackDown New Year's Revolution. Because, first of all, I am fully on board with, you have 5 hours of content weekly, and that's just your main roster shows. Yeah, make them more must-see.
Mm-hmm. Whenever they use these trademarks, it makes it seem like it's going to be a bigger deal. So why not? It's on January 1st. Call it Raw Day 1. It's exactly what they should be doing.
Huge fan of all that.
So the lineup right now for Day 1, Becky Lynch against Nia Jax. Rhea Ripley is going to defend the women's world title against Ivy Nile. Seth Rollins is going to defend the world heavyweight title against Drew McIntyre. And then there's a number one contenders tag team title match, or tag match to determine the number one contenders for the titles. Tegan Nox and Natty against Zoe and Shayna. I'm assuming that Becky beats Nia, or it's like a no DQ, or it's a no contest disqualification type thing. And they'll probably just continue to feud over the next couple weeks and stuff. I think it ultimately doesn't matter who wins the number one contenders match, because Katana Chance and Caden Carter are just holding that for damage control. So flip a coin on that one. And probably both titles stay where they are, because I think that Ivy's got no chance of beating Rhea. That's just obvious. But I think Sami Zayn's going to screw over Drew McIntyre.
Did Rhea work against Ivy at the house show you went to?
It was Rhea, Ivy, and Shayna in a triple threat.
Nice. I saw some footage of Ivy and Rhea. They have a fun dynamic. I'm looking forward to this match. I'm looking forward to all of it, but more than anything, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select just reported that WWE is looking to add to their Day 1 edition of Raw, saying that while sources within WWE had claimed that the company is on the 1 yard line and landing a former WWE champion to appear on the show, and they feel confident they can get it done. The noting was specifically former WWE champion, and it was said that it's somebody not currently on the roster, but it wasn't said whether or not the talent was like active or retired.
So it could be like a legend, like Taker, for instance. Or Goldberg. He's complaining a lot.
Goldberg is actively talking about, they didn't give me my final match. Problem with that is I don't want to see Goldberg versus Seth Rollins.
Yeah, neither do
I. I got 2 ideas for this. Either Rollins beats Drew clean, and it's Rollins Brock at the Rumble, or I think Big E is back.
That'd be cool. I'd be down for that.
Again, I specify. If you don't know by now, I don't have sources. No, just because Shawn reported doesn't mean I know. That's just me having fun. But what do you think, Callum?
It's hard for me to be interested. So, I mean, it'd be cool to have Biggie back in some capacity if he is healthy. That's probably the main. That's probably it's the main like just hope thing with that.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with it.
So I mean, yeah. So beyond that, it's hard to find anything that's like particularly intriguing in that regard, because again, it's like unless there's a new signing or there's like someone they're bringing up from NXT to make it a bit more interesting, I'm not sure. But like a Biggie return would be great.
To say former champion, and specifically say former WWE champion, like unless it's Brock, John, maybe.
But they could be like any number of things. Like they could just be like, "Hey, Kurt Angle's backstage."
Yeah,
and then it's just like kind of one of those. Okay.
If Kurt Angle's backstage, they're going to do the meme, aren't they?
Oh God, yeah, they sure are. Those are funny, though. Yeah, I don't know. I get the vibe that if it wasn't someone directly going to impact story, that maybe there wouldn't be a report like this. It would just sort of be, hey, they're bringing in some fun names, you know? But I guess we'll see.
I mean, WWE champion is also could be kind of a vague thing because
That is true.
Yeah.
because it could be a WWE champion is like, hey, it's a former light heavyweight
European champion.
Mhm.
Fuck you. Like,
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of potential for it.
I guess I skipped over it because it's Raw. That could mean The Rock.
Yeah, could be.
I just don't think I want to see The Rock do anything anymore.
My argument against The Rock would be a case of surely we'd know it's The Rock at this point if that was the case. Like the fact that they're going like it's a former WWE champion to appear at the show, they're trying to be a bit more subtle about it.
My supreme guess is Brock, and he either declares for the Rumble or declares he's going to fight Seth at the Rumble. But I'm emotionally hoping Big E Langston's back.
I can see the Brock thing and just being like, I'm going to be in the Royal Rumble. Because I do think that he's going to eliminate Gunther and then set that match up. But
I think that's also where I see things going for Brock at Mania.
The lineup for NXT New Year's Evil right now, I think that Fallon Henley is going to beat Tiffany Stratton. This is apparently a setup where the stipulation is whoever loses has to be like the servant of the other one. So it makes more sense to me that they would film Stratton being like, ew, the ranch is gross, rather than Henley being Stratton's servant. You know what I mean?
But I can see there's an interesting thing with Henley being Stratton's servant in the sense that she could end up enjoying the finer things. You know, like that would be a fun little spin on it. But no, I think Shawn Michaels, even though it's never really been talked about, I'm starting to believe with all these vignettes and stuff that he must have really liked World Class and the Von Erichs. And this is something they did where I think it was Jimmy Garvin had to be Kevin's ranch servant. And I see it going in that direction.
There's the final of the breakout tournament, Riley Osborne against Oba Femi. And we talked about this before, still kind of the same opinion. They might do a story where like Fia Hale ruins it for Osborne, or like they're supposed to take a dive for Chase University with this debt story. If it's just straight up, I think Osborne wins. But if they want to tell that kind of like, oh, it's a shame that, you know, Chase University's woes are bleeding into that, then the only way to do that is Oba Femi winning.
Callum, are you an Oba feminist?
What?
The same people who tried to dub themselves the registered Lex offenders are now saying that if you're a fan of Oba Femi, you're an Oba feminist. Look, I think Riley Osborne wins, but people do like Oba Femi. People are digging it. Either or, they're both baby faces. It's hard to root for one over the other, but I think I'll go with Osborne getting the win.
There's Roxanne against Ariana Grace. Roxanne just wins. I think both titles are staying where they are. I think Lyra is going to retain over Blair, and Dragunov is going to retain over Trick, due to something that Carmelo Hayes does. You know,
I really want Blair to win.
I'd be fine with it. Yeah.
But it's like they seem intent finally on being like Cora Jade is next in line.
Yeah.
So maybe Davenport slips on a banana peel here, enters the Rumble. Like to me, B. Priestley's very good and should just go wrestle where wrestlers can wrestle good.
And then there's actually one more match on New Year's Evil. It's No Quarter Catch Crew against the Latino World Order.
Are we officially labeling? I was gonna call him Kalisto. Dragon Lee as member of the LWO.
Yep.
Okay.
He's like by proxy. Like he doesn't come out with them, but he continues to be like an ally. So it's like, yeah, he's part of it.
I'm sure they're gonna win because they're on SmackDown.
I don't know. See, I could see somebody like Del Toro or Joaquin Wilde getting pinned to set up one of the no quarter catch crew against Dragon Lee.
I like the no quarter catch crew, and I just hope that they're around more. I think that this is setting up to make sure that Gulak has something to do when WrestleMania is in Philly. Not that he'll be on Mania, but he'll be on
Stand and Deliver.
Stand and Deliver, yeah.
Could be. Maybe this is how they get around to it. I mean, it's still plenty of time, but yeah. SmackDown also is special. It's New Year's Revolution. Pretty cool that they're reusing that. Santos Escobar against Kevin Owens for that U.S. title match. I think Owens is pretty soundly going to win this, right? You guys agree?
Owens and Logan Paul at the Rumble is going to be something.
Yeah. That's a good match to get them on the card and, add to the Royal Rumble lineup and all. I think it's a good idea. EO is going to definitely retain the women's title over Michin. Sorry, Mia.
That's mean.
There's no chance whatsoever that Michin's winning that. Pretty Deadly's going to go up against Butch and a tag team partner, which, if it's not Tyler Bate, who the hell is it going to be? Sheamus? Maybe?
I'm going Tyler Bate, but I can see it maybe being Sheamus. But I think the fact that they didn't just say Sheamus makes me think Tyler Bate.
Yeah, me too. And then we got that triple threat to determine who fights Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble. It's LA Knight, AJ Styles, and Randy Orton. And I'm assuming Randy Orton wins. Knight already had his match. Styles is kind of turning heel, so I could see Styles and Knight feuding after this and Orton going for Reigns.
I feel like Randy is the obvious pick here, but I'm going to say don't sleep on AJ. He's probably my number 2 pick. And Knight's not winning. Knight will go in the Royal Rumble and everybody will be like, yeah. And it would be that'll be great.
And then that's it. There's the hot tags for the week, everyone. So
all right.
Tell us what you think, what you agree with, what you disagree with, all that good stuff. We were going to potentially do the end of the year recap stuff for this, but this one's gone on for 2 hours almost. And I've got almost no energy. So I think that we're going to hold that off a little bit, but that means that you just get an extra few days to vote on that fan feedback survey. So go over to that form. You can find it on the sidebar of Smark Moment right now. Fill that out. Let us know what you think we should be tweaking going forward in 2024. Pay attention to all the stuff that we are covering for these next few episodes. We got the AEW Worlds End pay-per-view point tomorrow. We've got the whole week worth of the TV show stuff, New Year's Knockout Week. I don't know what kind of big surprises we're going to get, but we'll talk about them on the next hot tags. And we'll also be doing the one to watch next week. So stay tuned for that too. But in the meantime, keep in mind all the things you should be following, liking, sharing, subscribing to, and all that. You can find them on amangotree.com. And you can find me at Tony Mango as a good portion of a lot of those. Follow Rapid Callum too while you're at it.
Yep. Follow me everywhere at Dude Felice. And, find my work on Fightful. It's been a great year. I think. No, we still have the pay-per-view point. Okay. All right. Callum, go ahead.
You can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Check out the Power Rankings over on smartcamo.com, where it'll be the final one of the year, and you can see where the superstars being ranked as we head into 2024. And then also you can check out the Fantasy League, also at www.fantasyleague.com, to see how our teams are performing, how many points we're picking up as we head into the new year, and only a few months away from crowning the champion for this season.
Me. Now you're still in the lead, so
it's close now.
Oh, it is nice.
Me? I'm fine with there.
That's what's close about it. Yeah. All right, everybody. 6:30 in the books. We got that one more pay-per-view point coming up, and then it'll be in the new year. So stay tuned. We'll see you then. Thanks for listening. Adios. This has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.